What's happening, everybody? Welcome back. And if it's your first time here, just plain welcome. So, earlier today, as I record this, the United States House of Representatives passed the SAVE Act. This is essentially a federal voter ID act that will, require people to prove citizenship before voting. Now, a lot of people are very upset about this, and for a lot of reasons. One of the first reasons people give is that this will somehow make it harder for blacks and other minorities to vote. The argument being that they have a harder time getting driver's licenses. I get that. I get where they're coming from on that. The argument is that these are people who are often more economically disadvantaged and therefore may not have like a car or any way to get somewhere to get the appropriate ID necessary to vote. It's also complete and total bullshit. Now, look, I live in a town called Albany, Georgia. It is roughly 70%, 60 to 70% black. I haven't looked at the stats lately. Majority black population. It is a very economically disadvantaged community. People don't have a lot of money. We've had voter ID laws in Georgia for years now. I mean, it's been the thing for quite a while. And people have IDs. This argument that they can't get IDs is absolutely ridiculous because they need them in almost every other aspect of their life. They need an ID to cash a check, right? For example, if they get a check from anyone, anywhere, and they want to cash it, they have to go somewhere and they have to show ID so that people know, yes, you're actually the one who deserves this check. This is your check, right? They get that all the time. You want to buy, alcohol and you're iffy on age. You've got to show ID. You want to buy tobacco. You have to show ID. So this whole argument about ID seems like, really pretty elitist bullshit to me. You're saying that black people are either too poor or too stupid to, get ID when they need it in every other aspect of their life. And it's never the poor black people saying, well, there's no way I can get ID. It's usually someone in Congress or on television, somebody who's made their way, and now they got to look out for the poor folks, right? They got to look out for them poor folks who can't look out for themselves. They need a guiding hand because they're too dumb to figure this out on their own. Yeah, that's a little disturbing. Not gonna lie. Now, the other group impacted is women. The argument is that there are 69 million women in America who will have difficulty getting their hands on the required documentation. And this would be pretty significant. We're a nation of 330 million people total. 69 million is a massive number when you look at that, especially when you consider that 330 million or so is the total American population. It includes people who can't vote for whatever reason, immigrants, legal immigrants. It includes children, people who just can't vote. So that's alarming. It's also absolute fucking bullshit. Okay, first of all, there's 101. First of all, there is 108.1 million women over the age of 18 in the United States of America. Okay? So we're looking at roughly 70% are going to be shut out, right? Wrong. 84 million of those are already registered to vote. They're not going to have to re-register. They're already eligible. Right? They've got their voter registration. They've got their ID. They're ready to go. This is women going forward. So now let's look at some basic math. All right? And this is basic math. 108.1 million minus 84 million gives you 24.1 million people. That's 24.1 million unregistered females of voting age. That's not 69 million. It's not. Not even close. So why are they saying 69 million? Because they want to inflate the numbers to make this look like this massive issue because they want to generate outrage among women. Because if women are outraged, men are going to start like having to at least pretend they care if they don't want their wives to hit them in the head with a frying pan. But these women are not being shut out at all. Only 24 million will have to produce these documents. And for at least some of these 24 million, that's not a problem. They're not married. So they've got they've got their birth certificate, which is acceptable form of citizenship. As acceptable proof of citizenship, I should say. But what about the others? Marriage licenses are not acceptable. They're not taken, and that's an issue I have with the SAVE Act. They should allow a birth certificate and the marriage license or other documents showing a legal name change in order for people to get registered to vote. But about half of those remaining, or about half of all people, which if you extrapolate it out, should cover the other 24 million, they've got U.S. passports. That's proof of citizenship, right? That covers that aspect. They can show their passport, which should cover, will have their married names. And your marriage license is something you would use to get a passport if your current name differs from what's on your birth certificate. So if you take your birth certificate and your marriage license and get a passport, that's proof of citizenship to register to vote, meaning there's still a way to register even if, right? Even if there's, you're married, you have not registered, and now you're going to run into trouble. No, you can still register to vote, right? It's a little trickier. And it's, like I said, I'm not crazy about leaving out marriage licenses in conjunction with other documents. Okay? But it's not that big a deal. There's a way around it in the law. So that argument's bullshit. The next argument I've heard is that it's already illegal for non-citizens to vote. And that's true. So why is it an issue to require an ID to make sure they don't? See, the idea of legality, what's legal and what isn't legal, and whether people are going to do that is kind of dumb. We know people do illegal stuff all the time. That's why we have prisons. That's why we have a police force. If people just followed the law all the time, you wouldn't need any of that. We wouldn't have to spend tax dollars on law enforcement. We wouldn't have to spend tax dollars establishing prisons and a legal system for criminals, right? We wouldn't need any of that. But people break the law. And let's be perfectly honest, there's a lot of non-citizens who want to be Americans so bad they don't care about the law, right? They might opt to vote, and we know that has happened. It may not be super common. Apparently they did an audit here in Georgia a while back and found that the percentage of non-citizens who had gotten voter registration was not particularly high, only like 20 or so of the audit sample. And it was a much larger sample. But the thing is, those 20 votes are still votes that weren't legal. And if it's illegal for them to vote, then why are we having an issue with requiring an identification card, some way to prove you are eligible to vote in the first place? This seems infinitely reasonable to me. The idea of just registering to vote and taking my word that I'm an American citizen, which is what currently happens, seems really dumb because I can lie if I wanted to. I can tell you I'm an American citizen. I can tell you I'm a citizen of Antarctica. And you've got to take my word for it. Right? There's nothing, unless I show you proof, unless you require that proof, I can say whatever I want. And it's kind of funny because a lot of the same people who are arguing against requiring an ID to vote, saying it's too burdensome, it's too much of a problem, it shuts people out of the process, It's too much when dealing with a right that Americans possess. An ID is too far for that, yet you have to show an ID to buy a gun from a licensed gun dealer. That right is enshrined in the Second Amendment. It was what our founding fathers believed to be a natural right. The right to keep and bear arms is something that you have a right to simply by virtue of being a free man or woman. You got to show an ID for that. Why don't I have to show an ID for voting? Nobody's answered that. No one's ever been able to give me an answer for that, right? And that's an answer I want. Why is it that buying a firearm is more restricted and more controlled? You've got to be so careful about who can buy a gun, but not about who votes. Let's keep in mind the people who win elections can start wars. They create laws that every law is enforced at the barrel of a gun, ultimately. So why is that somehow not worthy of making sure we keep it to citizens versus buying a firearm? You got me. I honest to God cannot puzzle this out. And I try to put my head in liberal progressive shoes to try to understand where they're coming from on this. And I can't do it on this one, guys. I can't. Can you? If you can, do me a favor, go down in the comments. Tell me what you think, why you think the official reason is. Not the speculation about, nefarious things. I know those arguments, and I tend to agree with you, but what is the official reason? What is the reason they're going to give us for that? Put it in the comments. Let me know. On the flip side, what do you think about the whole thing to begin with? And, you agree with me, disagree with me, whatever. Again, put it in the comments. Engagement is good. YouTube needs it. I need it. Just how it works. While you're down there, do me a favor, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, notification bell, all that stuff. That way you can be notified every time I got a video up. 3 times a week, Sunday, Tuesday, and Thursday. Also down there, you can find me on Twitter, or X now. You can find my Substack. There's also a coffee link. If you want to support the channel, use that. Donate a couple bucks. It'll be a big help. If nothing else, it'll keep me well caffeinated. And on that note, I am going to wrap it up, and I will see you all in the next video.